That's another good point. Animals that have to rip each other apart just to survive. We're talking about carnivores. Why would God design a system where there's so much cruelty and suffering? Darwin mentioned that there's a certain type of wasp that lays its larva, inside other living creatures, and then it eats its way out from the inside. Is God so sadistic that he designed animals and nature with so much cruelty and suffering? Is that really what you believe? Or is all of this just the blind forces of nature? An uncaring, unloving world. It's just evolution. It's just the world as it is. There's no God involved at all. Truly, there isn't. Atheism doesn't define what's good and bad. It's just about the belief or lack of belief in God. I, on the other hand, am a humanist. You could say in a way that humanism is my religion. So according to humanism, the thriving of conscious creatures is what matters. So if something helps people suffer less, animals suffer less, then that would be considered good in my eyes. If something harms living beings, then that would be considered bad in my eyes. It's that simple. If you want to know more about atheism and morality, check out my essay, Atheism and Morality, on abdullahsamir.com. I do believe that similar to Islam, Judaism and Christianity are also not from God. And I do believe that anyone that reads the Bible can see that it has a lot of mistakes in it and a lot of flaws in it, similar to the ones the Quran does. However, in terms of harm and benefit, we can say that Christianity and Judaism have been tamed by secularism, and in terms of, a lot of the things that Christianity is responsible for, like the witch hunts and stuff like that, it's just not there anymore. It's not a problem like it was. And of course, Christianity now accepts women pastors in some churches. They accept gays and homosexuals. So there's been a lot of progress, but the Muslim world is still lagging behind, and there's still a long way to go. So Islam, in terms of its problematic issues in the world, it's far worse if you ask me. Yes, this is exactly what I'm saying, that Muhammad was not a true prophet but was a false prophet, and the Quran is full of mistakes. One example that comes to mind is Surah Kahf. Surah Kahf talks about this man that goes to the edges of the earth where the sun rises and the sun set, and he saw the sun setting into a murky pool. We have actually found out where this story comes from. It comes from the Syriac-Alexander romance. The Syriac-Alexander romance tells the same story about Alexander the Great going to the edges of the earth, seeing a place where the sun sets, where the people had no shade, and guess what? The people were black where they had no shade. It's so silly. And then he sees where the sun sets, and the sun sets into a murky pool. They used to think the sun sets into the ocean, into a pond. It's so silly. Of course, today we cannot take such stories seriously, but somehow Muslims manage to reinterpret the Quran to make it still make sense, even though it doesn't make sense. Secular morality is the best thing that we have because it's actually all about reducing human suffering. Whereas when you compare that to religious morality, you end up with things like slavery, like concubines, like, jihad and stuff like that. None of this stuff is actually good for humanity, but it's all allowed. Why is it allowed? Because God said it's okay. When you look at secular morality, none of that would be allowed because none of that is good for humanity. So yes, it's not necessarily objective, but we can see that it actually reduces suffering and optimizes well-being. Religious morality does not optimize for well-being. It optimizes for pleasing an imaginary God. This is patently false. There was a conference known as the Quran and Science Conference organized by Sheikh Zindani in Saudi Arabia in the 90s, where they paid a bunch of scientists to come and talk about the Quran and say how these things were so good. But as time has gone by one, each of these so-called miracles, scientific miracles, has fallen down to the point that even Muslim scholars now are admitting that there are no scientific miracles.
They invited scholars, scientists from the West to Arabia and basically somehow got them to say some special things about the Quran. But we now know this is not true. The majority of those scientists have retracted those statements or have said that we were quote mined or whatever the case may be.
Quranic embryology is simplistic and totally inaccurate. It actually gets the order of creation wrong. It says first bones, then flesh. That is not true. Bones and flesh come together. So the Quran actually got it totally wrong. And you can see that the way that Muhammad is describing it is based on what he saw, what he understood. Others got it way more accurate, you know. For example, Aristotle wrote about embryology and he did a much more detailed explanation than Muhammad did in the Quran. We know that this is not from the Creator. In fact, the Quran doesn't even mention the female egg. It has no idea that there's a female egg. No human knew that there was a female egg back then. We only discovered that more recently. That's why it's not in the Quran.